In the cold, gray light of the northern border, blood wasn't a bond, it was a currency. Claudia stood on the precipice of the ironclad territory, the rain lashing against her skin like 1,000 tiny needles. She wasn't just cold, she was hollow. Behind her, the two men who shared her DNA, Colton and Wyatt Vane, were huddled under a single umbrella, their eyes fixed on a heavy charcoal briefcase. They weren't mourning the loss of their sister. They were counting the cost of their salvation. They had sold her to Roman Fontana, the Alpha King, the man whispered about in hushed, terrified tones across every packed territory, a man who had reportedly ascended his throne on a staircase of his own kin's bones. Colton and Wyatt thought they were the clever ones. They thought they had finally offloaded the defective sibling to clear their spiraling, gambling debts. They had no idea that by handing Claudia over, they weren't getting rid of a burden. They were handing a crown to a queen. And for the Vane brothers, retribution wasn't just coming. It was already written in the stars. The living room of the Vane estate had once been a place of warmth, back when Claudia's parents were alive. Now it smelled of stale scotch, expensive cigars, and the slow, agonizing scent of decay. The Persian rugs were stained with mud from the boots of enforcers, and the grand mahogany furniture was scarred by neglected glass rings. Claudia stood by the fireplace, her hands trembling as she folded a pile of laundry. She had spent the last 3 years perfecting the art of being invisible. Since her parents died in that suspicious car crash on a clear summer night, she had become a ghost in her own home. "You're out of your mind, Colton," Wyatt hissed, pacing the length of the room. "Roman Fontana doesn't make deals. He takes. If we approach the ironclad pack with a debt, we're asking for a death sentence." Colton, the elder and more arrogant of the two, leaned back in their father's leather wingback chair. He took a long, slow drag of a cigar, the amber tip glowing like a predatory eye. "We aren't approaching him empty-handed, Wyatt. We owe the syndicate $3 million by Friday. If we don't pay, they'll skin us. Literally. Fontana has been looking to expand. He wants the Northern Pass, and he wants a breeder." Claudia's heart skipped. She stopped folding. "The Northern Pass isn't enough to wipe $3 million, Wyatt argued. "Fontana has billions. He doesn't need our scrap of land." "He needs a mate," Colton said, his voice dropping to a sinister low. "The council is pressuring him. He's 32, no heir, no Luna. He needs someone with high blood heritage but no political baggage. Someone low enough on the totem pole that he doesn't have to deal with annoying in-laws." The laundry basket slipped from Claudia's hands, clattering loudly against the hardwood. Both brothers snapped their heads toward her. Colton's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a smile of pure, calculated cruelty. "Ah, Claudia," Colton purred. "Perfect timing." "No," Claudia whispered, her voice cracking. "You can't. Mom and Dad would never—" "Mom and Dad are dead," Colton roared, standing up and towering over her. The smell of cheap gin and malice rolled off him in waves. "And they left us with a pack that hates us, and a mortgage we can't pay. You've been living here for free, eating our food, taking up space. It's time you pulled your weight." "I run this house," Claudia shouted back, her fear momentarily replaced by a burning indignation. "I cook for the pack. I clean. I manage the accounts you two destroy. I am not a piece of furniture you can sell." Wyatt looked away, a flicker of shame crossing his face, but Colton grabbed Claudia by the chin, his grip bruising her skin. "You aren't furniture, sweet sister," Colton sneered. "Furniture depreciates. You're a pristine, high-born she-wolf from an alpha bloodline." Fontana agreed to the meet. Midnight. The border bridge. He brings the cash. We give him the land rights. And you. "He's a monster," Claudia sobbed, tears stinging her eyes. "They say he killed his own uncle. He'll kill me." "Then try not to annoy him," Colton said, shoving her backward. She stumbled, catching herself on the arm of the sofa. "Pack your things, small bag only, and wear something nice. If he rejects the goods, I'll let the syndicate take you instead. And trust me, Fontana is the better option." The drive to the border was a blur of torrential rain and the rhythmic thumping of windshield wipers. Claudia sat in the back of the black SUV, flanked by two of Colton's enforcers. They weren't there for her protection. They were there to ensure she didn't throw herself into the ravine. She wore a simple black dress and a trench coat she had salvaged from her mother's closet. She felt small, fragile, and utterly alone. "Stop shaking," Colton barked from the front seat. "I'm not shaking from fear," Claudia lied, her voice steady despite the cold settling in her marrow. "I'm shaking because you're too cheap to fix the heater in this car." Colton ignored her. "We're here." The car rolled to a stop at the entrance of the massive steel bridge that connected the Vane territory to the thriving, dangerous lands of the ironclad. On the other end, 3 armored SUVs sat idling, their LED headlights cutting through the rain like laser beams. A man stepped out of the lead vehicle. Even from 50 yards away, his presence was suffocating. He didn't carry an umbrella. He didn't seem to care that the storm was attempting to drown the world. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than Claudia's childhood home. He was flanked by guards who looked like special ops soldiers, but even they seemed like shadows compared to him. This was Roman Fontana. He had features carved from granite and hair as black as a raven's wing. But it was his eyes that stopped, Claudia's heart. They were the color of molten steel, glowing with a faint predatory light in the darkness. Colton stepped forward, clutching the briefcase. "Alpha Fontana! We have the deeds and the girl, as discussed." Roman didn't look at the deeds. He didn't even acknowledge Colton's existence. His eyes were locked on Claudia. In that moment, a strange sensation erupted in Claudia's chest. It wasn't the terror she expected. It was a magnetic pull, a snap of electricity that made her hair stand on end. Her wolf, which had been dormant and quiet for years since the death of her parents, suddenly woke up and roared against the walls of her mind. "Mate," her wolf whispered. Claudia gasped, the sound lost to the wind. "No, it's impossible." Roman took a step forward. He walked right past Colton, ignoring the hand the greedy brother had extended for a shake. He stopped 3 feet in front of Claudia. He was a giant standing well over 6'4", his shoulders broad enough to block out the storm. He tilted a black umbrella he had taken from an aide, shielding her from the rain. For the first time in hours, the water stopped hitting her face. The silence between them was louder than the thunder. "Claudia," he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was a deep, rich baritone that vibrated in her very bones. "You know my name," she whispered. Roman didn't answer. He turned his head slightly, looking back at Colton over his shoulder. The look of intense focus vanished, replaced by a snarl that belonged to a demon. "You brought her in the trunk?" Roman asked, his voice deadly calm. No, back seat," Colton stammered. "Look, Fontana, the deal was $3 million. She's young, healthy, pure bloodline. She'll give you strong heirs. Just give us the cash and—" Roman turned back to Claudia. He slowly extended a hand, palm up. An invitation. "Come," he said softly. Claudia looked at his hand, then at her brother's. Wyatt was sweating, looking like a cornered rat. Colton was already reaching for the money. They were nothing. They were the past. She placed her cold, wet hand into Roman's massive, warm one. The spark was instantaneous. A jolt of pure energy surged through her arm, warming her to the core. Roman's fingers closed around hers, firm and protective. He pulled her to his side, tucking her under the shelter of his arm. He smelled of rain, pine, and expensive sandalwood. "Beta!" Roman barked. A man with a scarred face stepped forward. "Yes, Alpha." "Transfer the funds to these creatures," Roman said, the word dripping with disgust. "And take the deeds." Colton grinned, relief washing over him. "Pleasure doing business with you, Fontana. You won't regret it. She's obedient if you—" "Another word," Roman interrupted, his eyes flashing a dangerous, glowing crimson. and I will tear your throat out right here on this bridge, treaty or no treaty." Colton's mouth snapped shut. Roman looked down at Claudia. He took off his heavy suit, jacket, and draped it over her shoulders. It was heavy, warm, and carried his scent. "Get in the car, Claudia." "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why did you buy me?" Roman paused at the car door. He leaned down, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. "I didn't buy you," he whispered, a secret meant only for her. "I retrieved you. I have been dreaming of a woman with one blue eye and one gold eye every night for 10 years. I didn't know you were real until tonight." Claudia's breath hitched. "And now that I have you," Roman said, glancing back at her brothers with a promise of lethal violence, "I am going to find out exactly why they thought they could sell my soulmate like cattle." As the door closed, shutting out the storm and her family, Claudia realized the twist of her fate. She hadn't been sold to a monster. She had been sold to the only man who had been waiting for her his entire life. The drive into ironclad territory revealed a world Claudia never knew existed, where her family's land was crumbling and neglected. Roman's territory was a fortress of efficiency and wealth. They passed patrol towers and sprawling estates until they reached the Citadel, a massive structure of glass, steel, and dark stone perched on a cliffside. As they entered, the staff bowed in total submission, but Claudia felt the weight of their judgment. She was a bought girl, a stray. Roman led her not to the guest quarters, but to the Alpha's private wing. When he opened the doors to the master suite, Claudia stopped dead. The room was filled with things she loved. Blue hydrangeas, her mother's favorite, sat in vases. A specific vintage edition of Wuthering Heights lay on the nightstand. An emerald green silk nightgown was laid out on the bed. "What is this?" she whispered. "Did you spy on me?" Roman closed the door, the lock clicking with finality. "Your brothers don't know you, Claudia. They don't know you read Bronte to escape. They don't know you cry when it rains because it reminds you of the crash. But I do. I felt it. For 10 years. He walked toward her, shedding his vest. "I would have paid $3 billion to get you out of that house. I will never hurt you. You are not a prisoner. You are the queen of this pack." The peace was short-lived. The next morning, the Citadel was breached by the High Council. Led by the oily Councilor Baines and backed by Colton and Wyatt, they arrived with a warrant for Claudia's arrest. The charge? The double homicide of her parents. "We found the evidence!" Colton shouted in the grand foyer, surrounded by council enforcers. "She cut the brake lines. She wanted the inheritance early." Claudia felt the world tilting. "That's a lie. I loved them." But Roman stood like a wall before her. "You want evidence, Baines? I'll give you evidence." Roman's head of intelligence, Jax, activated the foyer's massive screens. They didn't show Claudia's guilt. They showed bank transfers from the Crimson Fang, PAC, Roman's rivals, to Colton and Wyatt. They showed security footage from a hardware store miles away. A figure in a hoodie was buying wire cutters and brake fluid. The hood slipped in the video. It wasn't Claudia. It was Wyatt. "Technology is a bitch, isn't it?" Roman smirked, his aura flaring so brightly the enforcers took a step back. "They did it for the insurance payout," Claudia added, her voice ringing with newfound strength. "The money was locked in a trust because of the foul play clause. They needed me convicted so the money would release to them as the next of kin." Colton, realizing the game was up, pulled a concealed handgun. "If I don't get the money, nobody gets the girl." The shot echoed through the hall. Claudia closed her eyes, but the impact never came. She opened them to find Roman standing over her, a bullet wound in his shoulder already smoking and knitting itself back together. "You shot an Alpha King in his own home," Roman said, his voice now the guttural roar of a beast. "The council can't save you now." Roman invoked the old ways, the circle of truth, an ancient trial by combat where the gods were said to judge the guilty. In the sand-filled arena beneath the citadel, Roman faced both brothers at once. He fought them in human form, refusing to shift, a show of utter dominance. He dismantled them with the precision of a surgeon and the brutality of a hurricane. By the end, Colton was screaming the truth to the rafters, confessing to the murder of his parents, while Wyatt lay broken in the sand. But as Roman turned to Claudia, a dart hissed through the air. Wolfsbane. Roman collapsed, the black poison veining through his neck. From the shadows, Crimson Fang assassins emerged. The council had been a distraction. The rival pack had moved in for the kill. "Roman!" Claudia screamed. She vaulted over the arena railing, dropping 10 feet into the sand. Colton, sensing a final chance, grabbed a discarded sword and staggered toward the unconscious Alpha. "Goodbye, King." Claudia threw herself over Roman's body. "Touch him," she hissed, "and I will burn this world to ash." Something snapped inside her. The air in the arena grew heavy, vibrating with a low, humming frequency. Claudia's eyes didn't glow gold or blue. They turned a deep, luminous violet. A shockwave of kinetic energy exploded from her, throwing Colton across the arena and into the stone wall with a sickening thud. "The Witch Wolf bloodline," Sloane, the head enforcer, whispered from the sidelines. "It's real." Claudia didn't listen to the whispers. She placed her hands on Roman's wound and pulled. She felt the poison, a black, oily sludge, and she commanded it to leave. Violet sparks danced between her fingers as the wolfsbane was literally drawn out of his blood and into the air, where it evaporated into mist. Roman gasped, his eyes snapping open. "Claudia!" A month later, the citadel was no longer a fortress of fear. It was a home. Claudia stood on the balcony, the iron key to her family's estate in her hand. Roman had bought the debt, foreclosed on her brothers, and handed her the deed. "What will you do with it?" Roman asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I'm turning it into a sanctuary," she said, leaning into his warmth. "For the women the packs forget. For the girls who are told they are defects." Roman kissed her temple. "My queen." Claudia smiled, her violet eyes shimmering in the sunlight. She had been sold for $3 million, but she had discovered she was priceless. The Vane brothers were in a dungeon, the council was purged, and the ironclad pack had its Luna. The storm was over. The reign of the Witch Queen had begun. If you found Claudia's journey from a broken sister to a powerful queen as captivating as we did, don't let the story end here. Like this story to show your support for the ironclad pack. Comment below. What would you do if you discovered a hidden power within yourself? Subscribe and hit the bell to ensure you never miss our daily tales of supernatural romance, betrayal, and absolute revenge.